It's come in at least the last 3 years on one of our retreat forays.
So it's kind
It
of
started coming in about 6 or 8 years ago, and most of the ones were found by Haley, and she knows how to find them. And a lot of times they're underneath the moss, so she was looking for the little bump,
Hmm.
and then ripping the moss back and removing that what we thought was, a gasteroid version of Lucaria. That's what, and that was per Brit. But then Jan says Hypnangium carneum is a eucalyptus associate.
Yeah, and I think that's I looked at my I didn't say anything, but it's in my spreadsheet that Heather gave me that it's a eucalyptus associate. So just somebody else agrees.
which we don't have, right?
No,
We do not have, no.
it's
It's
only
an
in North
invasive
America.
species in like
Of
coastal
course.
California.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean,
What
I didn't know that. I thought it was more common than that. So it's probably not even a North American species, except where eucalyptus has been introduced.
It's
But we had
interesting.
nothing better to go on.
but somehow it's spread here in moss?
Oh
No,
no,
this
so
is a
there's
different
two.
species. So we just had it. It just got sequenced, and it comes back to the genus Cladobotrium.
Yeah, so
We're
the thing he's
describing
talking about that's associated with eucalyptus is this Hypnangium carneum, the pink false truffle, and this
this
was
is
the
the incorrect
name.
name. We
Is
were
the
applying
incorrect
that.
name for this observation. It's just that when we first saw it, that was the guess for what it was. So that got put on. And then later, Jan brought us the good knowledge that it is a obligate symbiont, so it's got to be with eucalyptus. Like we shouldn't expect that it could go anywhere else. And that she thinks it's a parasitized mushroom. We're trying to track her down.
Yeah, there was theories that it was a parasitized entoloma, and they
Hey
even had a
guys,
species
I am.
suggestion there because of the coconut smell.
I hope y'all are ready to repeat yourselves because it's 6:30. We might want to take a step back for all the folks who have been joining us and
Yeah.
um, we kind of showcase some of these things we've been getting a head start on.
Yeah, just so this is usually I would be starting off with showing off like our 2026 project, but going back to the past is kind of also what INAT is all about, that we have this record of things that we saw. So instead of just hearing, say, Tavis or Britton say, hey, remember that thing we saw? They can say, hey, remember that thing we saw, and then link me to it, and then I can see it and be like, yes. Now I can really witness it. So I was actually also going to show you guys how to take an observation. And so these two were the same thing. Tavis, just confirming this was like just observed later.
Yeah, so actually, I think this may have even had some dehydrator time. I don't recall. I took the picture on a morgue at Hiles a couple years back, maybe 3 years ago.
Cool. Okay.
Whenever it was the year before Britt gave his talk, so it might be 4 years ago.
Double check that date there, Mariah. Those aren't the same two. There are two from the same date. This is from 2024.
Oh no, yeah, these are not the same observed specimens for sure. Mine's older.
That's what I was trying to ask. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no. And I think that other one was Haley, wasn't it?
The other one in the state, this other one right here.
No, that one's me.
And then this one's Kitson.
Oh, Andrew Kitson. Okay.
You saw a different one, yeah.
So Haley and Neil from Iron Mountain, she has found it dozens of times. It's not uncommon, but she knows the technique. And she's looking for those bumps in the moss. It always is in moss.
That's very cool.
That last observation you're on, yeah, that's the same because he's the same date.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take this one is the same. So July 22. Okay, is this one. And you can do a fun thing where you go same.
So is Anna with us yet?
It looks like Anna has just joined. Yes.
I just joined. Hi.
Hey. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, thanks. We're getting into it with some fascinating species here.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm glad that I came early for this.
This organism is the apparently not uncommon in Wisconsin if you know how to look for it. If you're looking under, I guess, moss.
We're looking at moldy mushrooms, essentially, really ugly specimens that we get pretty excited about.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this species is the parasite. So like well, and that's the thing when I was going on about truffle lifestyle. Am I correct in thinking that this is a hypomyces? Yeah. So it's honestly though, it could still be that the hypomyces is forcing. That's an interesting thing. I don't know. Every day I'm challenged with the question of do I consider whatever this thing is a truffle because it's a lifestyle and not a set of related organisms. It's not really underground, but it is doing truffle-like behaviors by if it is attracting animals to eat it. If it's not using that smell to attract animals to eat it, then it's
Maybe a
not even
slippery slope.
close.
A lot of the hypomyces are, eating up the gills and, eating up the gills
Gobbling,
and
yeah.
causing deformity.
And causing deformity or maybe causing it to not emerge fully. Yeah. So no, we would be definitely on the no, this isn't a truffle. And that also brings me to maybe a curation thing. So then why is it appearing in this project? Because this is one where it's an inclusion list
You probably
set
put
up
it
by
in
the
there.
people who like run the project. Now they actually do consider some things truffles that I don't think are truffles. And that just gets right down to when you have a definition that's based on a lifestyle and not something really clear cut, like, is it related, yes or no? Then
It's probably included because I see Hydrangea is in this list. I'm going to
yeah,
assume it doesn't come out of the project when it gets renamed, maybe.
that's a good thought. Yeah, because let's see, is this one in there? Yeah, this is because this was never listed as this was listed as Hydrangea. Okay, let me find one that was never listed as Hydrangea. Do we have one like that? Yeah, you're right, Brennan. Good point. So this is where a nice curation, I'm going to go in and try and tell it to remove it. Might be that I can't. Might be that only the person who observed it can go in and remove it from Truffles of North America. But we'll figure that out later. You could try it, Tavis, if you wanted to.
I certainly will. I'll look into that tomorrow. I'm on my phone tonight, and it's not as handy as a computer.
Yeah, no worries. I had not.
Your audio is great though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a NAMA meeting last night, and they complained several times about my audio.
So you.
But you got a new computer though, and it was still.
It's just screams. Not
No
on my
worries.
end, but everyone else.
Bogus.
And Max, I sent you a message. We'll talk later, but I've got those slides separate for you.
Splendid.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll set whatever you need.
For all the other folks here, do you want to just give a quick, I don't know if we really described what we're looking at exactly. Do one of you just want to really break it down, this thing we keep looking at, the Cladobotridium? Or I could do it, I guess, since I'm suggesting
Yeah,
it.
you please do. Sorry, I was focused
I
on.
can. I've probably seen it more than most of us. That has come in at a few of the forays, and it was kind of our mystery mushroom. And the most intriguing part was its strong odor of artificial coconut, like banana boat suntan lotion. And we'd had it set aside for a couple of years, and then when Britt Bunyard was talking in Hiles, he described it, and he said maple or coconut, and all of a sudden it was like a light bulb. It's like, oh, is that what we have? So we showed him pictures, and he said, yeah, that's it. And we called it Hydrangea carneum. So the couple of observations that we have of it, we used that name. And Jan Thornhill stepped in and said, Hydrangea carneum is a eucalyptus associate, ruling out the possibility that this was Hydrangea at all. And I think I'd added notes on my observation just saying, we don't know what the hell this thing is. We're just calling it that for now for fun or whatever I said. And then it finally got sequenced. I think I just got the news yesterday or today. Yesterday, I think, that it was in the genus Cladobotrium. Not a genus I'm familiar with. That was news to me, but very exciting that we have a name to put on this. So it's been found numerous times, always in moss and sometimes completely encased in moss, where you have to like break the moss apart to find this ball of stink. But sometimes on the surface too. And I don't know anything about Cladobotrium. So you're saying it's a parasite on something in the agaricales?
Yes, it's definitely something on the agaricales. One of them, Hui Feng described, the one that she found is, you can see like this observation here. It's got it like making the sequoioid form, like the hypomycetes affecting the gills. And then there's other ones where it's not. And she was saying that the best ID for the host was Leptonia. So it's an example of, I need to change this because I can't read. Host is Leptonia, not
Leptonia would be an Entoloma.
Yeah. I just
And
missed it.
it's a subgenus of Entoloma. I think we can still use Entoloma.
Yeah, it's
that's
definitely one of those ones where I hear people go back and forth.
Yeah, Machiel says don't use Leptonia. He said that's a subgenus. Use the genus Entoloma.
Okay. I think on iNaturalust they recognize it as just a section or a subgenus only.
Right. That would be correct as far as I know.
Okay. Well,
But
going back,
still be Entoloma.
one of the interesting things here is that we have Cladobotrium obconic, the species. Hold on, let me try to say it again. Cladobotrium oboconicum. Obconicum. Thank you. And then we have it in the genus Hypomyces listed here. That's a funny situation. I don't really know how that's happening, where they're the taxonomy, except for that. I do know that Cladobotrium is a medically significant, has some kind of medically significant species in it. So sometimes when that happens, they don't change the taxonomy, even when it should be changed by the rules. Like the rules will say Hypomyces, the name came first, and this is being lumped in. But because they don't want to confuse doctors who, they're not mycologists, but they are doctors and practicing, they'll be like, let's keep the name Cladobotrium.
What happened with Canosobe moving into Foliotina then?
Well, are either one of those considered medically significant as diseases?
Canosobe filaris is lethally toxic.
That's one of those ones where it might be, so they would consider that on a case-by-case basis is how I understand it. And it's usually if it's clinically significant, like it's being taught in medical schools, not like.
Okay, it's not common here. It comes in on mulch. I do have pictures of it somewhere that I've seen it one time on mulch that came from Oregon. But it's a Pacific Northwest species. Canosobe filaris, now Foliotina rugosa, I think.
The common cone cap.
That's the one. It's got a very distinct annulus.
Yeah, I see, like most of the way. And we have this here, right? I've seen it.
It is here. They might have it in the Northeast also, but the only way we would see it here, I believe, would be on mulch. I don't think it's a native species.
Okay. At least a decent amount of people are claiming it's here, but when we look a little closer, almost all of the claims, which some of them might be dubious, but almost all of them are in more like populated areas. So it may be that it's coming here on, yeah, there's a lot in what looks like. I'm going to use a filter here to limit us to, let's try if the Midwest will come up for me. Midwest region. You can see what region it thinks that is. There we go.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. It is, but it gets me most of the way, where I just wanted to see, just at a glance, do these look pretty legitimate?
I can't see well enough on my phone, but I'm expecting a lot of these are going to end up being Agrosobe.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least some of them are, but is it that double annulus that it looks like it's pressed together on
It's
both
very
sides?
thick and felt like would be the way I would describe it. It's
Yeah,
like that one looks legit there,
it's
but you
this.
also have to compare it against like Agrasabe acericola, which is going to
Mm,
look very similar with that low annulus.
yeah. Oof. Wouldn't that one have darker spores when mature?
Both would be brown spored.
Okay, I just think of Agrasabe as like extra dark spores, but maybe Pholotina is too.
Yeah, it was formerly in Canosabe, and Canosabe is a brown spore. Like Canosabe apella, the little white mushroom, that's brown
Yeah,
spored, like clay brown.
yeah, but there's definitely levels of brown.
On that one, I can see pretty well on my phone. That to me looks like Foliotina. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
That's being seen in Tennessee. So you're telling me that this one is
It might be native to the Northeast also. I don't recall
yeah.
its exact range. Pacific Northwest, maybe the Northeast, like the Maritime states. Uh, but I would say it's not native to Wisconsin. I would
Interesting.
say that's a transplant in, likely on mulch.
Interesting to figure out how many things are getting moved around in those sorts of industries and how far they spread. I like the implications, I guess. Um, were you saying that this is a particularly poisonous species?
It's listed as lethally toxic.
Okay, don't eat her.
Yeah, don't eat.
Don't eat that. Highly toxic. Okay. So that would definitely be one where when I'm talking about just like remembering how we got here, um, as we continue to chit chat iNaturalist before Anna Sitkoff's talk, we were talking about hypomyces. I noticed that a cladobotrium was being put under the genus Hypomyces, but they're not changing the genus name. And that's just something that you can see if there is. I think that what's going on here is there's a medically, like clinically significant species of cladobotrium that got.
Interesting.
That's why they call it like they preserve the name, and they have to do that at those like special meetings where they like review this is how I understand it anyway. I don't really know. I would love to see it someday, but like they have to like vote on because there's a overwhelming public good of keeping this name, even though it's not like by the rules the right name. Let me just test that actually. So I would go to like Cladobontry. Funganiculus genus. I might be wrong too. If it's might just be that iNaturalist is set up as weird, but I feel like I recognize this for medically significant something or another. But there's like a lot of them too. Oh, interesting. Okay. So this is an anamorphic name that got lumped back together. But why keep the name separate? This is definitely one of those questions that's probably not particularly interesting to do live on iNaturalist. I'll figure it out later. Going back to our original, I guess, purpose here in the last probably 5 minutes or so we have before introducing our speaker. Just highlighting that, hey, we have these projects on iNaturalist. Do you like learning about mushrooms even when you can't go outside because there's a blizzard? Join these. Got a umbrella project on iNaturalist, so you can find all of them. You can go in and see our one from last year and still join all of these ones. and get your fungi seen by everybody in the society that's in these projects. And if you click the view more, you can see our baby project, newborn for this year, 2026. And there's only 25 people in it so far. But hey, you can, just today I went outside and saw some different Exidia species. Haven't put them up yet, but yeah, there's definitely fungi to see even if there's still snow on the ground. Decent amount of crusty stuff. And lichens. And I was going to highlight, I get to pick one by me. And also ask, I'm thinking it's Tuberia furfuracea, but I do not know enough about Tuberia yet to be like, oh yes, I'm confident in a species ID without doing micro.
Tuberia furfuracea is the first mushroom to appear every year.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking too. This showed up March 8th right outside my apartment building. And
yeah, but there's also several species of Tuberia. So Tuberia furfuracea I see on soil a lot. More so than on wood. What's another one? It's not hip. Is it Hypnorum? Or is that a Galerina? No, that's a Galerina, I think, Hypnorum. Or is it Tuberia?
I'll look it
I
up.
don't remember. There's another spring one that you see, and they're very difficult to distinguish. So Tuberia SP is probably good enough for a lot of them. Until you get into like the red ones, there's some red Tuberia that are very pretty.
What was wondering about the Tuberia in the growing off wood or soil or maybe soil that was maybe more sort of woody or something or decomposed.
When I find it on soil, I actually find it more of a prairie setting. So Anna Demers has that recreated prairie at her house. I found it there, and then on the trail that goes back to a woods near my home where my garden is, we find it along the trail there in the grass every spring.
Wow. I think it is Tuberia furfuracea, but I'll spend some more time with the details of it. And I did take a specimen of it, or so I could maybe do make a spore print. Somebody's shown a really beautiful spore print here. That's a lot of spores. Like at first I didn't think it was.
The print won't help you get to species, of course.
No,
because they're all going to print the same.
I was assuming collecting for microscopy, but that's
Sure.
I don't know if that's a distinguishing feature or not either. That's where you have to kind of make your list of suspects, find out what would be different.
I've got 6 or 8 species in my notes. I can send you that info when I'm at my desk. Yeah. But furfuracea is going to be your most likely candidate, especially this early in the year.
Yeah. Lauren was pointing out to me that one of the sort of quick, like you're trying to have a quick gut reaction, is this Tuberia or not? But that they have these sort of knobbly, almost, I said worm-like stipes. So just take a look at that.
Like knobbly.
Knobbly. Yeah, they're like, I actually don't remember what word she used, but it was like that they look kind of half deflated. Something structural is going on in there.
Is there a little scurfiness going on there too? A little
scurf, yeah. That's
scurf.
Well, they'd be furfuraceous.
Yeah. Furfuraceous meaning scurfuraceous. That's a fake word. Don't listen to me. These ones have looked like hats. That's one of the things on iNaturalust. I have you can order your observations that you're looking at by like date added and just be like, well, what's the most recent one that was observed? Okay, well, some of the ones I did were. But then you can change it to by faves, like number of people who have like favorited the observation. And that's how you see the weird ones and the colorful ones first. You could go to this. This was seen in Wisconsin. They're calling it Tuberia confragosa. And it came out looking like a hat. not really scientifically significant that it looks like a hat, but it's also needs ID, like this person is not sure about it. The exaggeratedly broad campanulate caps don't seem like a great match for this species. I don't know, Tavis, does this chime with you to be anything else? Like it is one of the red ones. And
I'm trying to think of what the red species I have photographed is. Geez, it would be under my observations. I don't have that access right now because I'm not at my computer.
No worries. I'll try to see if I can find it on your.
Yeah, was it like Rufofalva or something? I don't remember what it was. It wasn't Rufofalva. Maybe it was.
There we go. See all the tuberia Tavis has ever seen on put on iNaturalust. Rufofalva? You have?
Rufofalva. It was Rufofalva.
Yeah, the burgundy.
Yeah, I don't know that the color is great on that. They were quite red, like burgundy.
Yeah, I believe you. That might be one of those.
Wes Anderson and I found those near Hinckley, Minnesota.
So this is where I don't know too much, so I'm not going to like suggest it about this particular thing. So I'm not going to suggest it to this person for his or her observation. But I can maybe just drop a link to this other species for Derek to
particular
consider.
Observation. I put a observation I've made in the chat that I've identified as Cyclosobe erebia.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that one too would get. Yeah, that would certainly be a candidate.
For that same one that we were looking at.
The one that's reddish. Yeah.
And it's doing that kind of turning up. So that's the other, can go to something.
Yeah, I've never seen Cyclosobe be that red. Cyclosobe used to be in Agrosobe. And when it got divided out into Cymosobe and Cyclosobe, and Agrosobe still stands.
Yeah, they don't really strike me as particularly red, though.
No, I would say they're pretty dull brown. They can be a very beautiful brown with a very distinct annulus, but no, I wouldn't ever call them reddish brown. More of a gray brown, if anything other than just brown.
Yeah, and these ones are not mycorrhizal, so we're not putting them down for that effect that you had discussed that one time about mycorrhizal mushrooms associating with aspens, I think it was. I always forget.
Aspen, yeah. Getting the reddish tinge.
Getting the reddish tinge, yeah.
Yeah, we see that with Clitopolis, Amanita, and Boletus.
I find that so cool that you notice that. I don't know, just like I'm thinking about it. Oh, I didn't realize I didn't have my video on. Okay. Hello. And we're at about just thank you for everybody's patience with me nattering on about iNat this time. We did a very scattershot program today. But those are fun too. So I think I'm going to invite Max Reinhardt to introduce our speaker, Dr. Anna Sitkoff.
Well, hello, everybody. Gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Anna Sitkoff. She first encountered medicinal mushrooms while supporting her father through adjunctive cancer treatment at the Osher Center for Integrative Health in San Francisco. That experience sparked a deep curiosity, leading her into the biomedical literature on medicinal mushrooms, hands-on exploration of extraction techniques, and eventually to sharing her growing expertise through talks and workshops at conferences nationwide. As her interest in natural medicine expanded, she enrolled in the Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine program at Bastyr University. During her medical training, she devoted extensive time to laboratory research examining the effects of medicinal mushroom extracts on cancer cell lines. She also began writing for a broader audience on her blog reishi-and-roses.com, excuse me, where she translates emerging research and clinical insights into accessible, engaging content for the general public. And I'm here to tell you there's an extensive amount of research and references on that site. For tonight's topic, it's medicinal mushrooms, women's health, and ergothionienes. Dr. Sitkoff has done extensive research and testing on medicinal mushrooms and their various compounds. She is focused on women's health, pregnancy, and the use of mushrooms to bolster women's quality of life. Her extensive knowledge on ergothionienes, research on specific mushrooms such as Fomitopsis cajanderi, founding of Lucidum Medicinals, work with NAMA Science, North American Mycological Association Science Committee, and myriad publications provides us with an extensive wealth of knowledge from which to benefit. You may also find other interviews, tremendous amount of information through the Mushroom Hour podcasts, Mushroom Revival, perhaps the Flora Funga podcast, and Gutsy Talks. And she can be contacted through drannasitkoff.com. And I could probably go on for quite some time, but I would prefer to have everybody hear Dr. Anna Sitkoff.
Thank you for that introduction. It's pronounced Anna, just so everyone knows. There's no way for you to know that. But it's Anna, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, that iNatiralust discussion was like so satisfying to me after a long day of doing clinical work. I think my ASMR is just like listening to people talk about mushrooms. So thanks for that. I would love to, oh great. I'm going to share my screen, start the presentation. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, all right. Awesome. So medicinal mushrooms for women's health. This is a quick bio. I think that Max basically covered everything, so I won't waste time here. If you guys have any questions about me at the end, I'm happy to answer them. A little overview of the presentation. So we'll start with just kind of an intro about ergothionine. And ergothionine is definitely like woven throughout the presentation just because it is such an important compound found in many mushrooms. We'll go through the hormonal cycle. So everything from puberty, fertility and reproductive years, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. And then a little bit at the end just about some advice about how to choose mushroom supplements. So, as I said, ergothioneine is going to be mentioned a number of times. It's an important nutrient for all humans. And you'll see kind of as we move through the female lifespan, kind of the importance that it has in a number of different areas. Ergothioneine is a heat-stable, water-soluble amino acid. So that's all important, when we're considering how we're processing our mushrooms. And so when you're sauteing your oyster mushrooms, all of the ergothioneine in there is stable and you are absorbing almost 100% of the ergothioneine that is in them. And out of, so mushrooms have ergothioneine, blue-green algae has ergothioneine. You find some in different animal livers, but mostly just because of the foods that they were eating. Mushrooms are by far the most abundant source of this amino acid. And it's a really important antioxidant. It is a backup system to glutathione. Glutathione is like our body's main innate antioxidant. And what's really cool about ergothioneine is that it is taken up very readily by the body, and then it can be stored in cells up for up to 1 month. So you can be kind of like as you eat mushrooms through over time, you are actually like building up plasma levels of ergothioneine for later use when needed. All right, so let's start with puberty. So the key goals that I think of here are HPA axis regulation. So that's going to be your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that's just like your brain talking to your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are responsible for a number of things. One of the main things is making of stress hormones. I would add here the HPO axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary ovary axis. So that's also like the brain communication with the ovaries. That axis, that communication is very closely linked to the HPA axis. So, high stress situations can impact brain communication to the ovaries as well. Mood stability, think about inflammation modulation, immune balance, and metabolic regulation. And so the two top mushrooms that I would use at this point in the female life cycle or lifespan is reishi and lion's mane. So when it comes to reishi, and with any mushroom, I often think about kind of the energetics of that mushroom and then also the like clinical application. And so when you think about reishi, it's like energetically so useful for any kind of transformative experience. I really think about all mushrooms as kind of like the doulas of nature, really helping to support any transformative experience and reishi especially. On a clinical level, reishi can be very helpful for liver support and hormonal balance. And when it comes to puberty, hormones are kind of all over the place. And it is, one of the more transformative experiences that a human goes through. And so acne is a major complaint that a lot of people deal with. Part of the why acne often shows up during puberty is because of this androgen imbalance. Androgens are going to be like your male sex hormones. So think of like DHEA and testosterone. Um, so reishi lightly inhibits an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. 5-alpha reductase transforms testosterone into the more potent form of testosterone called dihydrotestosterone. And so through inhibiting that enzyme can actually be quite helpful for states of androgen excess in women. So you can think things like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or acne due to androgen imbalance. And then during puberty as well, with all of this hormone dysregulation, that is a common time for kind of a need for more immune support. And reishi comes in there, being an amazing antiviral and also having an impact on improving T regulatory cell function. So can help to prevent autoimmune diseases that might come up earlier in life around this time. And then lion's mane, think about going through puberty in early high school or late middle school. And that's, a common time, I think, too, for people to be diagnosed with things like ADHD and having more trouble focusing. There's a lot going on in your body, a lot of changes happening. With those changes come a lot of kind of mood instability, more anxiety. And lion's mane can be, quite helpful for helping to mitigate those or at least make them less intense than they would be otherwise. And then as we move into fertility slash the reproductive years, not everybody wants to be fertile, but there's other things to think about during this time, not just trying to get pregnant. So some key considerations would be supporting ovulation, egg quality, immune tolerance. So again, when I talk about immune tolerance, that's kind of like preventing autoimmune disease and metabolic health, and then just general hormone balance and cycle regulation. And so the main mushrooms that I would think of here that I use regularly would be reishi, maitake, turkey tail, poria, and cordyceps. So again, when it comes to reishi during this time, it's really helpful for general nervous system and hormonal balance and immune tolerance, androgen balance, cortisol regulation, supporting the estrogen balance via the gut microbiome, and then immune modulation in autoimmune endocrine disorders. So when we think about kind of the fertile years, one of the main conditions that I see so often in my practice that kind of keeps women from getting pregnant is a condition called PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. And part of that is blood sugar imbalance and often high androgens or androgen excess. So similar to how reishi is supportive during puberty, reishi can also be helpful for decreasing excess testosterone levels during this time, which can then help with fertility. Sometimes when you have too much testosterone, in the case of PCOS, that can actually inhibit the ovaries from making other sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. Another kind of common issue that comes up with infertility is just like an overactive stress response. So anything that's going to help to regulate cortisol levels will also be quite helpful in somebody's fertility journey. And reishi can help to not only kind of lower cortisol levels that are too high. When you think of, with insomnia, there might be cortisol dysregulation where you have too much cortisol at night. But it can also help with chronically low cortisol levels if your morning cortisol, which should be high to kind of wake you up in the morning, and that would be part of like a normal circadian rhythm, would be having high cortisol in the morning, and then it decreases as the day goes on. When that's dysregulated, reishi can actually help to improve those low cortisol levels. And then the majority of reishi is actually not absorbed into the bloodstream. The majority of the mushrooms that you take in are not bioavailable, which is actually totally fine. We don't necessarily need all of our mushroom medicine to be bioavailable because a lot of the medicinal benefits that we get are actually just like the mushrooms interacting with our gut microbiome. And a lot of our estrogen balance, our hormone balance, comes from microbiome regulation. We have this whole aspect of our gut microbiome called the estrobolome, and these are the gut microbes that are essential for estrogen metabolism. And reishi, through its kind of prebiotic effects on the gut and feeding the good gut microbes and producing more postbiotics like butyrate, then that helps to support the estrobolome and so helps to support regulating estrogen levels. And then there are a number of different autoimmune conditions that can impact fertility. And so reishi comes in there as a really important medicine to help increase T regulatory cells and so to then decrease more autoreactivity in the body. This is just a study that was looking at reishi's effects on low cortisol levels, and what they found was that 2 grams per day divided into 0.5 grams 4 times a day helped with low cortisol levels in women with chronic fatigue syndrome. The study duration was 12 weeks, and they used just an aqueous extract. It was not said if it was myceliated grain, mycelium, or fruiting body, unfortunately, but it was a water extract, so assuming that it was pretty polysaccharide rich. And here is another study that was looking at reishi's impact on stress levels. This was a study looking at a formula. There's a few of these that we'll look at, and this was a formula of lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, reishi, and cordyceps fruiting body. The dose was surprisingly very low. I never use a dose this low in clinical practice, 125 milligrams twice a day. But at that dose, it did improve anxiety, stress, depressive symptoms, helped to regulate cortisol levels and even inflammatory markers. And this was another formulation study, again, very small dose, 125 milligrams twice a day. Looking at the formula is just slightly different than the last one. This is just the reishi fruiting body, Cordyceps militaris, lion's mane fruiting body, and then the Cordyceps sinensis mycelium. And this formula was, again, helpful for mood and sleep quality and general regulation of the stress response. Then we get to maitake, which is, I think, one of my favorite culinary medicinals generally, and especially during the reproductive years. And maitake is kind of the first mushroom that comes to mind, I guess, even before reishi when it comes to conditions like PCOS, specifically for blood sugar regulation. So through blood sugar regulation, maitake can actually help to regulate the ovulatory cycle. So often with PCOS, you stop ovulating and so you stop menstruating. And one of the main therapies used for PCOS is a medication called clomiphene citrate or Clomid. And so in this study, they actually looked at the effects of maitake compared to the effects of Clomid, and it was almost just as effective. And then even when you combined the two, it made the Clomid even more effective. So the mechanism of action that it helped with ovulation was actually just through blood sugar regulating effects, like I said. And then turkey tail. So it is, I was talking about with reishi, like the importance of the gut microbiome for hormone regulation and the importance of that for fertility, and the vaginal microbiome and the health of the vaginal microbiome is also a very important thing to think about when it comes to fertility. And turkey tail can be extremely helpful for eradicating HPV, even like the HPV strains that are more high risk, so more likely to turn into cervical cancer, and also helps to improve the makeup of the vaginal flora. Um, all of that being said, so the research here is on, for at least for the vaginal HPV, cervical HPV, is on PSP, polysaccharide peptide, which is an isolated compound that is kind of a patented process from a specific strain of turkey tail mycelium. That being said, turkey tail mushroom contains polysaccharide peptides. It's not just, but it's not going to be like this exact PSP that's in the studies. So this was the study looking at this specific gel. That's a turkey tail based vaginal gel. There's some other ingredients in there. So gotu kola and aloe vera and a little bit of neem, hyaluronic acid, but turkey tail being, or PSP, excuse me, being the main ingredient in here. And there was clinically significant HPV clearance with the use of this gel after 6 months. And this is available you can buy this online. And then in this study, this was actually the turkey tail mushroom. And it was looking at turkey tail mushroom and reishi mushroom together. And it showed that oral HPV 16 and 18, so these are high risk strains that are associated with cancer, was eradicated in 88% of patients in the treatment group, while HPV was only eradicated in 5% of the patients in the control group. And again, this dose is quite small, 400 milligrams per day. And then poria. Poria is a mushroom that is like so commonly used in traditional Chinese medicine, and I feel like it hasn't totally made its way yet into kind of the Western medicinal mushroom world. but it can be very helpful during the fertility years and especially for PMS when there's like a lot of bloating and water retention. There's actually a traditional Chinese formula called cinnamon twig and poria pill, and it's used to promote blood circulation, remove blood stasis in the lower abdomen. And it's a formula that's kind of one of the top formulas prescribed by TCM practitioners for PMS symptoms. And cordyceps can be quite helpful here as well. So when it comes to thinking about egg quality and sperm quality, focusing on mitochondrial support, those little energy centers of the cell, is going to be kind of one of the most vital things. Like aside from regulating the hormones and regulating the gut microbiome, mitochondria really need to have a lot of focus. And cordyceps can boost cellular energy, so boost ATP production, enhance oxygen utilization, and just generally acts as an antioxidant and protects mitochondrial function. And then cordyceps also, was in a number of those formulas helping to regulate the HPA axis and help with stress regulation and cortisol regulation. So back to ergothioneine. Ergothioneine is extremely important for egg and sperm health. The ovaries and the testes are prone to oxidative stress, and this is DNA that you definitely do not want damaged. So what's really cool is that there's ergothioneine receptors, I mean, all over the body. There's specific transporters for ergothioneine called OCTN1 transporters, and they seem to be most present in tissues that are more prone to oxidative stress. And these transporters are present in the seminal vesicles. So seminal vesicles, sorry, now we're talking about male anatomy here, produce a significant portion, so 70 to 80% of seminal fluid. And nourishes, so this fluid is what's going to be like nourishing the sperm and also aiding in ejaculation. So there's significant ergothioneine in sperm, and that ergothioneine helps to kind of bind heavy metals. It decreases oxidative stress, protects the sperm against oxidative damage. Sperm DNA fragmentation is a major cause of infertility and recurrent miscarriage. So anything that you can do to kind of protect the sperm DNA is really important. So, just having your male partner just like eat a lot of mushrooms if you're having any kind of reproductive challenges, it's another really important aspect to think about. And then in pig studies, ergothioneine improved oocytes, so that's like your egg cell maturation and embryonic development by decreasing oxidative stress in oocytes. And then we move into pregnancy. So key considerations here are going to be blood sugar regulation, preeclampsia prevention, general nourishment, and sleep. And the main mushrooms are going to be reishi, and then the culinary medicinals, so lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, oyster, all of too many to name really here. But as far as like the kind of more strictly medicinal mushrooms, reishi is really kind of the only one that I would consider more like absolutely safe during pregnancy. There's just not enough information on the others. So maybe some of you have heard about this myth of the reishi babies. Supposedly, consuming reishi throughout the second and third trimester of pregnancy can help your baby's nervous system, when they're younger to just be like less reactive, generally, more nervous system regulation. I definitely have a reishi baby, so that's just my experience. I'd be curious to hear if any of you guys have reishi babies. But yeah, reishi is generally considered safe in the second and third trimesters. And then, of course, it can be so helpful just for sleep as well, which every pregnant woman probably needs some sleep support. And the main takeaway with using mushrooms during pregnancy is really just like eat your mushrooms. Um, there was a study looking at women who ate white button mushrooms during pregnancy, and that, if you ate 100 grams of white button mushrooms during pregnancy daily, then that would be helpful for reducing incidence of high blood pressure, preeclampsia, excessive weight gain, diabetes. I can't help but wonder, like, if it wasn't just white button mushrooms, like if they actually had the women consume like lion's mane or maitake or shiitake or oyster, like we probably would have seen even more significant, interesting benefits. Um, I think that white button mushrooms are fine, but if I were to eat mushrooms during pregnancy, I would definitely focus on the mushrooms that are higher in ergothioneine. And so that's really going to be more of these mushrooms that I listed here: lion's mane, maitake, shiitake, and oyster. And this was a really cool study that just came out like a few weeks ago that I was really excited to read, showing that higher maternal intake of mushrooms, so women who are eating more than 15.9 grams per day, which is not a lot of mushrooms at all, throughout their pregnancy, was independently associated with a decreased risk of peer problems and low prosocial behavior in their children at age 5. So they tracked these women, they tracked their children, and they found that the women who ate the most mushrooms, their 5-year-olds were better at sharing. So that's some pretty cool research. They were better at sharing and like better at making friends. So eating mushrooms throughout your pregnancy can benefit your future child. And back to my favorite, ergothioneine for preeclampsia prevention. So preeclampsia is a dangerous condition in pregnancy that's associated with high blood pressure and then leaking of protein in the urine. And this is a pretty common cause for kind of emergency C-sections and pregnancy complications, and can be really dangerous. And um, the kind of more current ideas around the cause of preeclampsia is really around mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress. And so that's where ergothioneine really comes in and can be helpful. And in one study, women with the highest plasma concentrations of ergothioneine were found to be less likely to develop preeclampsia. And ergothioneine is very, very safe. It's safe for infants, children, pregnant and breastfeeding women. The European Food Safety Authority kind of gives kind of the doses that are considered safe that you can look at here. You can also go on their website if you're curious or feeling nervous about taking a supplement while pregnant or eating a bunch of mushrooms while pregnant. Ergothioneine is, yeah, very safe and can be so useful for preventative care throughout pregnancy. And yeah, as I said, with the mitochondrial dysfunction being, I think, kind of one of the major causes of preeclampsia, and ergothioneine is a mitochondrial targeted antioxidant, so pretty specific therapy there. And ergothioneine, like I said before, is very heat stable. So you are getting the majority of the ergothioneine that is present in your mushrooms just by eating them. Here's the ergothioneine leaderboard. So this is how many milligrams of ergothioneine per kilogram of fresh mushrooms. Golden oyster by far has the most. And then shiitake, porcini, king oyster, oyster mushroom, maitake, white button has like barely any, but it does have some. So yeah, I would definitely recommend eating golden oyster if you have access to that, or most people have access to shiitakes in most grocery stores. And yeah, so cooking, if you are making like a stew or a soup or something, a lot of that ergothioneine is going to end up in the broth. So make sure that you're drinking all of that if you're cooking your mushrooms in water. If you don't like to eat mushrooms, but you want the ergothioneine and you don't want to take a supplement, you could just like make a mushroom broth. You can, simmer the mushrooms in water for a few hours and then drink that, and you're going to be getting a lot of ergothioneine that way, in addition to the polysaccharides. And postpartum. So the key things to think about here are immune recovery, lactation support, mood, nervous system support, and connective tissue repair. When you are pregnant, the immune system does a big shift. So you can kind of, a very simplified way to think about the immune system is that you have these two buckets of Th1 and Th2. Th1 you can kind of think about as more geared towards autoimmunity, and Th2 is geared away from autoimmunity, tends to be more kind of like allergic kind of reactions. And during pregnancy, there's a big shift away from Th1. So a lot of women experience improvement in autoimmune disease kind of symptoms. But then after giving birth, with the huge plummet in estrogen and progesterone, there's often a big immune shift, and people who do have autoimmune conditions experience a big flare during that time. And so it's really important to have your immune modulating mushrooms um, kind of already present. So like reishi, another great use of reishi. People should probably just take reishi all the time throughout their entire life. Reishi can be really helpful for increasing those T regulatory cells and hopefully mitigating that big immune shift. Again, energetically, reishi for transformative experience. And then clinically, nervous system regulation, sleep support, and then prevention of that big immune shift. So, stuff that we've talked about already. So helping to regulate the cortisol rhythm, the sleep-wake cycle, general nervous system regulation. With the plummet in progesterone and estrogen postpartum, it's a really common time for women to experience postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And reishi, along with lion's mane, can be a really, really helpful combo during that time. And then prevention of the autoreactivity just meaning like autoimmune. And then again for microbiome support. And then I think I had already kind of said this out loud, and this will come up a few times more in the presentation, but just trying to really drive this home is that low bioavailability with mushrooms is a feature, not a flaw. You don't always want your mushrooms to be more bioavailable. The more bioavailable they are, the less active they'll be in the gut, and the gut is where most of the magic happens with mushrooms. And so this is a brand new study that's very cool that looked to see kind of what happens from the time reishi extracts hit the saliva, so start being degraded by amylase in the saliva as they move through the stomach acid and pancreatic enzymes, and kind of what happens to the polysaccharides and the triterpenes, how they get degraded, and then once they do, how the backbone of the polysaccharides, the beta glucans, remain intact. They are still very active in the gut, and the triterpene glycosides become free, and they're very active in the gut. And that's really where a lot of the immune support ends up coming from, rather than the small amount that is actually absorbed in the bloodstream. And maintaining, good gut bacteria, having enough butyrate, having a healthy gut barrier integrity, all of that is so important. And reishi can really be quite helpful there, as can most mushrooms. And then lion's mane, like I said, very helpful for postpartum anxiety and depression and kind of that typical mom brain. So really helping with focus and memory. And so in this study, they were looking at lion's mane in the form of cookies. So they used lion's mane powder, 2 grams per day, and the powder was baked into the cookies. And the women who consumed lion's mane cookies experienced significantly less anxiety and depression compared to the placebo. It's over a 4-week period of time. And then cordyceps, again, it's like, postpartum is a time of kind of deep fatigue and nervous system dysregulation. And so cordyceps can be really helpful here just for kind of general maintaining energy, helping to support mitochondria and the HPA axis regulation. And tremella is one of my all-time favorite mushrooms and so useful, I think, postpartum and during menopause. It's very moistening and very cooling. And, with this lack of estrogen that comes postpartum, and as we'll talk about with menopause as well, it can cause a lot of vaginal dryness and just systemic skin changes. And tremella is just so moistening and can help with all of that dryness. And tremella also is just so wonderful for the kind of gut, any kind of gut inflammation or gut imbalance, helping with the microbiome as well. And this is a traditional Chinese medicine dessert soup that is really nourishing and healing and moistening. And if any of you are postpartum or have any loved ones who are postpartum, you should make this for them. And it feels so good. And so if you're curious about this recipe, I mean, it's a pretty common recipe. You could probably just Google it and find it online. I can also share it with you at the end if you want it, or you can take a screenshot of this right now. And beta glucans for milk production. So there's a lot of research on oat beta glucans, or not a lot. There's some research on oat beta glucans showing that they can help with lactation. So one study found that beta glucans stimulated prolactin via the dectin-1 receptors. So if you are a medicinal mushroom nerd, you know about dectin-1 receptors. Dectin-1 receptors are present on immune cells in the gut, and that's kind of one of the main receptors that bind to beta glucans from mushrooms that then elicit one of the main kind of immune responses after taking mushrooms. So just to give like a quick little overview of that, beta glucans bind to dectin-1 receptors in gut-associated lymphoid tissue. That then stimulates macrophages, which then you're going to have an increase in certain cytokines that will elicit like an antiviral immune response, an anti-cancer immune response. And so that's all via the dectin-1 receptor. Turns out dectin-1 receptors are also present on the pituitary gland. And when beta glucans stimulate dectin-1 receptors, that also helps with milk production, which is very interesting. There's 2 studies right now in progress evaluating the impact of yeast beta glucans on human lactation, but no results are out yet. So unknown the exact impact of our mushroom beta glucans, but I think just considering the dectin-1 mechanism, it's likely that they do help with some milk production. And then sleep is kind of one of the biggest things that I think about postpartum, for mom and for baby. And ergothioneine is just amazing for sleep as well. It really does everything. So 20 grams daily for 4 weeks or 8 grams daily for 16 weeks improves sleep quality duration and decreases nighttime wakings. So the studies that showed this were very interesting. They were actually like looking for a specific plasma concentration to be reached. And so the first study that was done was the 20 grams daily for 4 weeks, and that showed great benefit with sleep quality. And then the subsequent study was like, well, can we reach that same plasma concentration that you did with the 20 grams daily for 4 weeks, just using 8 grams daily over a longer period of time. And like I said earlier, ergothioneine builds up in the plasma and stays there, and you can store it. And so what they found was that yes, you can take a lower dose daily, but it just takes longer to start to have the effects. And so it took 16 weeks to reach that same plasma concentration with 8 grams daily. And then an important note about this is that OCT-N1 transporter that I mentioned earlier, that's that specific transporter for ergothioneine, it is strongly expressed in the placenta and mammary tissue. So the ergothioneine that you're taking in while you're breastfeeding, your baby is getting some of that ergothioneine, and so they're going to be having that downstream benefits as well. So could help with mom's sleep and baby sleep. Maybe a question that's on some people's minds is, are beta glucans transported in breast milk? And the answer is no. Those molecules are too big, so baby will not get the beta glucans that you are getting from your mushrooms. And then perimenopause, the wild time that can be anywhere from 10 years to 15 years long, can start as early as age 35, and usually just goes through 50 or beyond until menopause. Menopause being the time when you have not had a menstrual cycle for an entire year. So menopause is really just that one moment in time where it's been 1 year since you've bled. And during perimenopause, it is a time of a lot of hormone fluctuation. So progesterone is going down, it's just decreasing as time goes on. And with that decrease in progesterone, estrogen is just kind of like on this wild roller coaster. And so that's what causes a lot of the perimenopausal symptoms. So kind of the main goals are, one, to kind of help to buffer the estrogen fluctuations and to help support kind of the metabolism and excretion of excess estrogen. And then to help with, again, bringing in that HPA axis, HPA axis dysregulation. And then there's often like big metabolic shifts that happen during this time too. And mushrooms can be really helpful there. So main mushrooms that come up here often are going to be reishi, lion's mane, and cordyceps. So reishi, again, really similar stuff to what we've kind of already been talking about, really helpful for cortisol rhythm, sleep-wake cycle support, general nervous system regulation, microbiome support, again, helping the estrobolome process those excess estrogens and get them out of your system. And then this is another really common age for autoimmune conditions to pop up. So having reishi on a regular basis kind of help to increase those T regulatory cells and mitigate autoreactivity as much as possible can be quite helpful. And this was the study that I keep referring to, where 2 grams per day of reishi extract helped to improve T regulatory cell function in older women. And lion's mane, so a lot of the research on lion's mane is actually with like perimenopausal and menopausal women, specifically helping with mood and anxiety, depression. And cordyceps, of course, can be so helpful during this time as well for all the same reasons that I've been talking about: nervous system balance, energy, mitochondrial function, and then one thing that we haven't mentioned yet with cordyceps is just exercise performance. And so, when we think about perimenopause and menopause, it's so important for women to stay active, to keep their bones strong. And what I see quite often is that if there is any like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, post-viral fatigue syndrome, any kind of mitochondrial dysfunction during this time, then that can be like the main thing that keeps women from exercising. And because this is such a sensitive time metabolically and for bone health, that can be a really big problem. So having something that can help with exercise performance and help to prevent like post-exertional malaise or poor exercise recovery. Like that's something that we really want to make sure is in place. So cordyceps can be quite helpful there. This study was looking at Ophiocordyceps sinensis and Ganoderma lucidum together. And this was a study looking at athletes, so it's a little bit different than what we're talking about. Although, I mean, plenty of perimenopausal women are athletes. Um, but this was looking at cyclists, I believe, and kind of seeing if it helped with endurance. And the biggest takeaway for me from this study and why I even put it here was because one of the main mechanisms in which it helped with endurance was through mitigating the oxidative stress and inflammation that high exercise can cause. And that kind of post-exertional malaise that a lot of women experience if they do have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, that is because of the high oxidative stress and that can be caused from mitochondrial dysfunction with exercise. So cordyceps and reishi combination can be helpful for preventing that. And then in menopause, the main kind of things that we're thinking about here are, that estrogen decline. And so what comes with that is bone loss, metabolic changes, and sleep disruption. And so, the same star mushrooms come up over and over again, but for good reason. Reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, poria, and tremella. So you can see that menopause looks very similar to postpartum, and that's basically because postpartum, your body is basically in menopause while you're breastfeeding. Very similar hormonal situation. So again, with reishi, really helpful for cortisol rhythm, sleep-wake cycle support, nervous system regulation, and then prevention of autoreactivity. And then lion's mane, very helpful for brain changes associated with aging, mood, depression, anxiety. In this study, they were looking at the lion's mane, seeing how it changed cognitive function. What's kind of interesting about these studies, and maybe you all are already aware of this, is that like once you stop using lion's mane, it stops working, and this kind of shows up in the literature over and over again. So it can be really helpful. Like in this study, it was quite helpful. They were taking 250 milligram tablets 3 times a day. And it did help to increase cognitive function scores, but then after they stopped taking it, the benefits also kind of diminished. So it's something that if you're taking it for cognitive function, it's something that needs to be taken ongoing. And then again, another lion's mane study showing that there was significant improvement in the mini mental status exam after 12 weeks of use. The dose here is 3.2 grams daily. The doses in these studies are like all over the place. In my practice, I usually start with 3 grams per day for most people. And then kind of depending on their response, I do more or less. Like if they're super responsive, then kind of do less and see if they continue to have the same benefit with less. And cordyceps during this time, same stuff we've been talking about, energy, nervous system balance, but libido often kind of drops off around here in menopause as well. And so cordyceps can be, I think, like theoretically helpful for libido, maybe more so for men than for women. I've had some patients that it's been really helpful for. It's not like my top choice for low libido, but I've also seen it be helpful, I think, and the way that it's helpful, I think, is secondary by just like helping to kind of regulate the stress response, not necessarily by acting on like specific hormones. And then poria, can be quite helpful for urinary tract support during the menopausal period. This is like a really common time, for women to end up having like more urinary tract infections, usually because of the loss of estrogen in the urethral tissue. But Poria can be helpful for just general urinary tract support and again, helping with bloating and water retention that can happen with the loss of estrogen. And tremella, for the same reasons that I talked about for the postpartum period, just being so wonderfully moistening and cooling, helping with connective tissue and cognitive support as well. And yeah, just helping to kind of moisten up all of those dry tissues that come with the loss of estrogen. So, drinking or eating that traditional Chinese medicine dessert soup throughout menopause can also be quite helpful for keeping things moist. And tremella, is I think of tremella kind of as one of my top mushrooms actually for cognitive support and helping to kind of prevent neurodegenerative disease. It's kind of a lesser known mechanism of tremella, but in this study, there was significant improvement with short-term memory and executive performance with the high dose tremella group. And it also increased gray matter volume in several brain regions. So there's a lot of animal models showing that beta glucans can be helpful for bone health. There are not any human trials, so this is kind of a maybe. But perhaps the beta glucans can help with bone health in menopause. The main mechanisms are that they reduce osteoclast differentiation through immune signaling pathways. There is a gut-bone axis, so we know that beta glucans are really helpful for microbiome composition, and through helping to regulate the gut microbiome, they can be helpful for bone health in that way. And then just generally through decreasing inflammation in the system. The more inflammation that there is, the more bone breakdown that there might be. So beta glucans might be helpful for bone health, but I wouldn't depend on them if you have osteoporosis, but they could be supportive. And then ergosterol as well for bone health during this time. So ergosterol converts to vitamin D2 under UV light. And then once taken up into the body, D2 converts to active vitamin D3, which supports calcium absorption and bone mineralization. Vitamin D2 it can improve your vitamin D status, not as well as vitamin D3 does. But if you are consuming a lot of mushrooms that have been exposed to UV light, I think that, it'd be kind of a interesting experiment to do if you have low vitamin D and you want to eat a bunch of mushrooms and then recheck your vitamin D levels and see how much they improve. Most of the research that compares D2 and D3 shows that it does improve it a little bit, but not quite as much as D3. And then I didn't have my talkie doesn't have its own slide here, but this is just like a really important point that I want to make is that so since we're in menopause now and we're talking about just like aging people generally, not just women, your immune system becomes less it responds less to vaccines as you age. And so this is kind of like one of the main issues with vaccination is like, well, it's like the aging population is like more immunocompromised. And so the vaccines would be like most helpful for that population, but they actually like don't respond very well to vaccination. And not responding well, I just mean like their immune system isn't as activated as a younger person's. So this was a very cool study looking at the effects of maitake mushrooms on antibody production in response to the flu vaccine in older people. And people who were continuously taking maitake, so they took it before the vaccination and after, they had significant increases in antibodies. after the vaccine compared to people who were not taking the maitake mushroom. And those that were taking the maitake, if they got a cold, the cold was much more mild than the people who didn't take the maitake. So it's a shout out for maitake improving vaccine response. And then I've said this so many times throughout this presentation, but just important mechanism of action to take home is that probably about 90% of mushroom extracts are not absorbed. They are not bioavailable. And what is absorbed or what isn't absorbed is broken down and interacts with the gut microbiome. And that is where all of the magic happens. There is, so much about mushrooms that we didn't talk about, so many different body systems. And for every body system, there is a gut axis. There's like a gut kidney axis and a gut testes axis and a gut liver axis. And like so many of the benefits that mushrooms have on the human body are via the beneficial impact that they have on the gut microbiome. And how to choose the best products. So this is kind of the conclusion that I've come to. So if you're going with liquid extracts, you want them to be dual extracts. Dual extracts meaning that there has been an alcohol extract and a water extract. Now, there's a lot to consider here because every mushroom is different and different compounds act differently in different solvents. And so, generally, your hot water extract should be, and it's not probably not going to say this on the bottle, but ideally, be like simmered in water for at least 2 hours. When it's heated for longer than 2 hours, like if it's boiled at 212 degrees longer than 2 hours, polysaccharides do start to degrade a little bit. So, about 2 hours is a good amount of time. Keeping in mind that depending on the mushroom, some of those, there are certain compounds that are not heat stable. So like with lion's mane, you may not want your liquid extract to have been like boiled in water first. It would be nice if there was like a cold alcohol extraction and then it was boiled in water and then there was like another alcohol extraction and then all of that was mixed together. So maybe more of like a triple extract kind of thing. But generally just make sure that there is at least an alcohol part of the extract and an aqueous part of the extract. No like normal like it's like a normal tincture with just like pouring alcohol over the herbs. That's not going to work with mushrooms. You're going to miss out on a lot of the medicinal compounds. And then when it comes to powders, you want it to be a powdered extract, or if it's just powder and it's not extracted, then you're going to want to heat that. When you heat the mushrooms, that's going to make more of the beta glucans and the polysaccharides more available to the body. Whereas if it's not heated, the cell wall, the chitin beta glucan cell wall is going to be kind of remain too intact, and you're not going to be able to benefit from those polysaccharides as much. And then if you're having capsules, you want it to be a powdered extract. And then if you're doing whole mushrooms, just make sure that they are well cooked. Don't eat raw mushrooms. You're not going to get very many benefits from eating raw mushrooms other than maybe fiber. And then when you're choosing a product, you want it to say mushroom or fruiting body or pure mycelium. There are a lot of myceliated grain / full spectrum products out there. Full spectrum just means that it is myceliated grain plus like the primordia, so just like the beginning of the fruiting body. That is fine to use, but just keep in mind that if it's just myceliated grain, depending on the mushroom, you're going to be missing out on some of those compounds that there tends to be more of in the fruiting body. So like the triterpenes in reishi would be a really good example. Like you're not going to be getting a lot of those reishi triterpenes if you're just using the mycelium. Another aspect of this is that if it's a myceliated grain product or full spectrum product, the the mycelium and the mushroom is going to be diluted with the grain substrate that it was growing on. So even if it says, the capsule has 500 milligrams of myceliated grain, it's probably not that much because it's diluted. It might be more like 250 milligrams of oat and 250 milligrams of mycelium or something like that. And then keep in mind too that a lot of people are sensitive to grains. So if you are, if you've had a bad reaction to a mushroom in the past, like maybe it's not the mushroom, maybe it's the substrate that's in your myceliated grain supplement, or maybe it's like a chitin sensitivity or something like that. And that is all. All right, I'm ready for questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, so thank you very much, Anna. There have been a number of questions. I've been trying to keep track of all the ones in the chat, but then I also want to give people the opportunity to maybe speak their own question aloud if they wanted to. And if you want to do that, maybe try to put it in the chat that you want to, or raise your hand. Seeing a lot of positive reactions too on the like people doing the little thing. That's nice. Yeah, I love the inclusion of all of the studies. I love a study.
Yeah, me too.
Because it is such a complicated thing, and that's the thing we're all in the process of research, like constantly finding out new stuff about this.
Totally. I feel like every time I do a talk, then like a new study comes out the next week, and I'm like, oh, I wish I knew that last week.
Yeah. So I also kind of, because I love studies, was trying to research some stuff along the way too. So when I present some of the questions from the chat, I'll try to be like, oh, and I found this
Oh, cool. Great.
too that I had shared with people. But so going way back to the first one that I had seen in the chat, there was Aaron Corbett asked, you point out the importance of mushrooms interacting with the gut microbiome. What do we know about the effect of reishi or shiitake when used topically? And this was one where I did look it up, and I was like, oh yeah, there's people talking about reishi extract, or sorry, shiitake extracts topically, but then there's also these weird cases of shiitake dermatitis. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
any comments?
Yeah. So reishi used topically. I mean, I used to teach a lot of like mushroom medicine making classes, and so when you do like a reishi oil extract, so like the fat will extract the same like terpenes that the alcohol will extract, so they're alcohol and fat soluble, and those terpenes are what have like an antihistamine effect, and so you can put that like directly on like a bug bite or kind of more of like a allergic kind of reaction. I find that it works best when it is blended with an aqueous extract of reishi. So you have all of those anti-inflammatory beta glucans as well. And then you can just like put a little bit of beeswax in there and blend it up and you get a cream. I have a recipe on my blog for like exactly how to do that. And I usually like to just like throw a fresh tremella in there. So it helps to kind of make it nice and moist. So yeah, topically, beta glucans are absolutely like very anti-inflammatory and then the topical reishi for more like skin histamine kind of reactions. I don't know about like the skin microbiome specifically and how it impacts that. I don't know if that was the question. But yeah, and then the shiitake dermatitis is usually when people eat raw shiitake or shiitake that like aren't cooked very well. And that happens, I think, in like 10% of the population. Um, I don't know about using shiitake topically. There's also a lot of cool stuff about chitin topically, and like chitin for wounds and chitin like bandages that are made from chitin. And so I think there's a lot there where like chitin derived from mushrooms can be helpful for not only like helping as like a styptic, but also to promote wound healing as well.
That's super cool. And I was just going to ask for myself, admittedly, and the people at home, what's styptic?
It means like it stops blood flow, like
Oh,
decreased blood.
cool. Next up from the chat questions, and again, if someone wants it asked, wants to ask their own, please just cut in. But Danny Arthur asked, do other species of reishi have similar effects to like you're talking about the Ganoderma lucidum that's native to like China and Europe, or
Yeah.
or Asia in general? But then ours is Ganoderma suge, like the one that's native to Wisconsin and that we can find on hemlocks. So like, is it
Yeah,
how
and
similar?
I have a lot of Ganoderma organens here, and I use them as analogs. I Yeah, I think with my patients, I end up using a lot of the Ganoderma lucidum because that's more of like what's available. But historically, like when I was making like more of my own products and selling them, I had a lot of people telling me about the benefits that they were seeing like with allergies, specifically with Ganoderma organens. Um, I haven't, there's like no human clinical trials on Tsuge or Organence. But like the chemical makeup is very similar. Like they have the ganoderic acids, they have same kind of polysaccharide profile. So I would expect it to be pretty analogous.
Right. So they've like been looked into in the literature for like what do they contain and trying to match it up, but they themselves haven't had the clinical trials.
No.
And that's kind of the like, well, we can see them as analogous, but
Yeah.
maybe the jury's still a little out.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, so from Amber Zuba, she's asking, what would happen if you dehydrate the mushrooms? Would you still get all the benefits? And I assume like at different temperatures, like hotter temperatures.
Yeah. So mostly, yes. The main ones to think about would be like, hericenones are a little heat sensitive in lion's mane. So just you don't, and most people like don't dry their mushrooms at super high temperatures, but just like drying it below like 70 degrees Celsius, is recommended. Like the ergothioneine polysaccharides, the triterpenes, those are all very heat stable. Um, Cordycepin and cordyceps is a little more heat sensitive. I would definitely make sure that your cordyceps you're drying like again below 70 Celsius, and then other mushrooms like that we didn't talk about, but that I love to use medicinally, like Cryptoporus vulvatus. I don't know if you guys have that, the cryptic globe fungus. That's like one of my favorite medicinal mushrooms for like antiviral benefits, and that has a specific sesquiterpene in it called cryptoporic acid. So sesquiterpenes are more volatile, and so if you're heating that too high, then that will you won't get the benefits of that as much. But for most of the mushrooms that we talked about today, I think you're fine to dry them and not have a problem.
Yeah, that is really cool. And we do have a Cryptoporus vulvatus. I
Cool.
put it in the chat for people so they could see the spelling. I just put like the link to iNaturalust for it so people could also see it. It's a crazy fun one to
It
find.
is such a cool mushroom. I love it.
Yeah. Um, and then the other thing that I think got said in the chat was people talking about, okay, 70 degrees Celsius is around like 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And yeah, that's a lot hotter than I dry my
Yeah,
mushrooms at,
people
especially
don't dry their mushrooms. Yeah.
if you're trying to dry it so you could like DNA sequence it too, if you're into that, you usually go way lower because DNA gets messed up at higher temps. So just following quick off of this, Mayday asks, Emily May asks, thoughts on freeze drying.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have thoughts about it.
Right. That did follow up quick about it. I guess that it probably wouldn't be doing too much damage to something. I would not.
I don't think so. I think it's probably fine.
So let's see, next question from the chat. So it's a drug interaction kind of question. Does ergothioneine have any known interactions with other medications?
Not that I know of.
Yeah,
I would be very surprised if it did. Like I don't, yeah, I don't know.
I knew that was going to be a tough one because drug interactions always are. Because it's like, have we tested it against everything? And in your
Yeah.
very specific body chemistry, or also like body of gut interactions and all of that. And it's like nothing in the literature I was just quickly finding was saying anything in particular.
Well,
It
Oh, Max, go yeah.
just to say, I've like considered with my aging folks suggesting different supplements and things with mushrooms, and there's almost always like some kind of contraindication with blood pressure if they're
Mm.
already on like blood pressure meds, you know. So then I have like, I'm not a doctor. I'm just, I'm not going to interject anything as soon as I see something, So with whether it's I don't know, lion's mane or a variety of other things, there's almost always like some kind of blood pressure thing, and so I don't know if that applies to.
Yeah, it's like it's all so theoretical with mushroom and drug interactions.
Mm.
Like when it comes like a lot of the drug interactions that come up are with like blood sugar and with blood pressure.
Yeah.
And if mushrooms were that helpful, if they were going to lower your blood pressure to a dangerous level while you were on a blood pressure medication, then you'd think that you would have some pretty positive effects with just using mushrooms alone for blood pressure. And the reality is that mushrooms like don't really lower blood pressure that much. So it's more of, I think there's like a lot of just like caution that I have not personally run into in my clinical practice. Yeah, a lot of theoretical interaction, I'd say. No like actual clinically significant interaction.
But that is to say, like, I guess it's just kind of like always pay really close attention when if you're
Yeah.
on medications and you're changing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Consult your doctor before you do this,
Yeah,
but
and then your doctor will say, I don't know anything about mushrooms.
right.
Yeah. No, I always say, like, start taking your diary about how you
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Um, Beth had asked, what are the differences in a cordyceps species? Like, would you say that there's differences in them?
It seems to depend. Like what I have seen between Cordyceps militaris and Ophiocordyceps sinensis is that they are often just like used as analogs, and some people just prefer one over the other. So I would say to like try both and see which one you like the best. And keeping in mind that like the Ophiocordyceps sinensis, you're most likely to be using the myceliated grain. And with Cordyceps militaris, you're more likely to be able to be using the fruiting body of that.
Mhm. Okay, so Kathleen Gavin asked, so back to kind of like side effects of things. This was kind of another broader question. So are there any negative side effects of dosing with mushrooms or interactions with other meds to be aware of besides like the negative she listed like
Yeah,
hospitalization? But I was like, well, that's pretty broad because it's going to be very variable.
totally. So like, the shiitake dermatitis that we mentioned, there's one. Um, if you have something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because the cell wall has mannins, which are polyols, those can cause like more digestive discomfort for people who have SIBO, who are trying to like avoid high FODMAP foods. Um, and then there are kind of a certain percentage of the population doesn't make the digestive enzyme to break down chitin. And so for those people, they might be more sensitive to the chitin in mushrooms and might actually be more likely to have like mushroom allergy and be actually reacting to the chitin. Um, and if that's the case, like if you feel like you're like, oh, I don't like when I eat mushrooms, I don't feel good. But then when I take like a liquid extract, I'm fine. Then in that case, it might be a kind of a chitin situation. And then obviously just stick with the liquid extracts. Um, and then also with lion's mane, there's some like theoretical concern that if you have like endometriosis, then part of those pain pathways, there is more BDNF or like brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And if you're increasing that, then you could potentially be like worsening those pain pathways and it could make pain worse. Um, this is theoretical. I have not seen this actually come up before, but there's like a lot of different little things to think about of like potential side effects, just depending on the person.
Hey, I was just getting the name of the Mannins thing in the chat for anyone who was like, oh, I want to follow up on that. It's spelled like Mannans, and that's the thing that causes the problem, maybe with the small intestine.
Mhm.
Bacterial overgrowth, like people with that already. So yeah, there's like all sorts of very specific kind of
Yeah.
for allergies if you have an allergy or
Yeah. Yeah.
um and there was kind of a I'm also going to maybe skip. Oh no, it's the next question. That's good. One of Nicole Hollander's questions is kind of a related topic. She wrote, I read somewhere reishi mushrooms can boost immune function, which may be risky for individuals with autoimmune conditions and could possibly trigger symptoms. So, because reishi mushrooms can boost the immune system, and people that have autoimmune disorders, their immune system's like already overactive. So, would you recommend reishi for someone who had, say, like celiac disease and an autoimmune condition?
Yeah. So reishi is not immune stimulating. Reishi is immune modulating. So reishi helps to increase T regulatory cells. It helps to increase it's called FOXP3, this gene involved with increasing T regulatory cells. So yes, reishi can stimulate an antiviral immune response, but it's also anti-inflammatory and immune modulating and can decrease autoreactivity. And so this is where mushrooms differ than just like a strict immune stimulant. And I use reishi all the time for people who have all kinds of autoimmune diseases and have never seen it trigger a reaction.
Interesting.
That is really interesting too. Yeah, that was one where I was like, well, let me see about the literature, and I could only find one case of like it wasn't really celiac or anything like that. It was someone who was 91. I'll just put a link to the clinical chart. Like it was one case of one person who maybe had some liver autoimmune
Oh,
reaction.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then like I think I showed that that more recent clinical trial in older women showing that it did actually increase T regulatory cells, which would be decreasing autoreactivity.
so maybe that's the kind of connection there. Cool. So the other question from Nicole was when you talk about how to choose products, you talked about heating like the mushroom powder. What temperature would you suggest to heat your mushroom powder to?
Oh, just like simmering would be fine. Yeah. Or I mean, you'd probably with mushroom powders, it might even be fine to just like pour hot water on it. Yeah.
Paste. Cool. Um, and then the last one from the chat, and then I'm going to invite people to either put more in the chat or speak or forever hold your peace. Jeremy asked, can ergothioneine also be helpful for sleep and menopause and any species of mushroom in particular to get that for that purpose?
Yeah, I think ergothioneine for sleep in any period of life. And I mean, yeah, so golden oyster has the most, consuming generally just like oyster mushrooms, shiitake, maitake, king oyster, all great sources of ergothioneine. And it's pretty easy to get the therapeutic amount if you're eating mushrooms on a regular basis.
Mm. And I'm assuming like some discussion in the chat has been around tempeh too. So I'm assuming like mushrooms or fungal culture.
Yeah, I just saw that question. I am so curious. I've never thought about how much ergothioneine is in tempeh, and I'm really curious. I've just like never looked that up before. If anyone knows, I'd love to know.
Yeah, and that would be the fungus.
Oh, look at that. 201 milligrams per kilogram. Nice.
That seems pretty big.
That's a lot. Tempeh is heavy, so probably don't need a lot of tempeh to get the like 20 milligrams a day. Cool.
So did anyone want to unmute themselves and ask their question or put more questions? Okay.
I have a question that I've heard Dr. Sitkoff, answer before, but just in terms of examining mushroom products that you're going to try to purchase, and how to find what maybe are the best ones. What are the things one might look for on the label of the product? If there's some third party testing, the ratios of things, and so on and so forth. If you're going to endeavor to um, consume these products, what might one look for as barometers of good?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, your product, either on the label or on the company's website, it will show that it's been tested for heavy metals and mycotoxins. As most of you probably know, mushrooms are bioaccumulators. So these are important things to consider. Um, Ideally, it's been tested as well for beta glucan content. So we're looking for at least probably a minimum of 20% beta glucans. Um, Triterpene content if it's like a reishi mushroom product. Um, you know, Depending on the companies, I know that some are like testing cordycepin content. And I think it's what's more important about these, it's not necessarily like, oh, I need to have 35% beta glucan in my supplement. It's more of a quality thing. It's like if it has that much, then you know that it's a mushroom kind of thing. Um, and then you also, if you're looking at the label and it says if it says mushrooms on it and it is like secretly myceliated grain and you really want mushrooms, the the main way to know is if you go into other ingredients and if it says oats or sorghum or if it has some grain there, then that's like the clue that it's not actually a mushroom product. Um,
So are you extracting something from oats, or are you extracting something from my mycelium from which those? Yeah.
yeah, so well now there's, some argument that like the oats that the mycelium are growing on is like adding medicinal value to the myceliated grain, which like sure, like oats also have beta glucans and oatmeal is a lot cheaper than like myceliated grain powder. So if you're looking for like pure beta glucan medicine, then you should just like eat oatmeal because that's medicinal in its own right. You don't need to have it in like a powdered capsule form. But yeah, all of those quality measures, third party testing is great. It's not there's only so much you can fit on a bottle. So, if it's not on there and you're like, this seems like a good product, but it doesn't say third party tested or it doesn't say all this stuff, then go to their website and it should be there. And then if it's not there, then it's not
No,
not your ideal product. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question?
perfectly.
Oh, great. Okay.
I have many others, but also like where to access tremella. I've been interested in doing like a cream perhaps or something like that,
Yeah.
topical kind of whatever. But I can't, somehow it's not a whole lot around where I can just,
Is there an Asian grocery store?
yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, you could probably find Tremella fusiformis there just as snow fungus.
So fungus.
Hmm.
We found some in lacrosse, and it's like this big gelatinous clear mushroom thing, like at an Asian grocery store.
Well, I guess my question is, given the potential for, I don't know where that was. I guess it was grown in China and blah blah blah. Maybe I'm a little paranoid about that type of thing. You think that's overwrought? You
Sure, or if you want to lower your food miles, right? That could be the other.
Yeah, I'd also say that like people have been growing mushrooms in China for a really, 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 really long time, like longer than any of us have even like thought about mushrooms for. And they're really good at growing mushrooms. And mushrooms don't need, for the most part, like pesticides and stuff like that. And, hopefully it would say like if you get it from a Asian grocery store, like if it's organic or not or whatnot. And of course, there's no way to know like if it has heavy metals. Um, but just because the mushroom's from China doesn't mean that it's bad. If anything, it might be better in some cases.
very well.
You can also definitely use iNaturalust sometimes to hunt. Here, I'm gonna if you want to be like find
Okay,
food.
you can just see like the last time that tremolo was found somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, you can, and it could be like especially
Yeah.
the ones that are wood decay or that are parasitizing other mushrooms as the case
Uh-huh.
with smell. You could be like, it's in that log. Hey,
Perfect.
that's also a reminder if you want to keep your spots hidden
Yeah.
and you
There
got
are
nothing.
also like companies that make tremella powdered extract. So like Real Mushrooms has a pure tremella powdered extract.
Cool. I was gonna ask a new question that popped up in the chat. So it's that this person has made a dual extraction of lion's mane and noticed a increase in her libido after taking it for a few weeks. Menopausal person here. Am I imagining this response is the question, or which is always possible, I guess. But or would lion's mane potentially have this effect? Or like, do you
It could
think?
totally have that effect. I mean, if you think about like the vast list of possible reasons why libido might be diminished, I mean, a lot of those reasons, like depression is on there, anxiety is on there. Um, so, I mean, lion's mane helps with both of those things. So that would kind of be, yeah, a possible cause. Like a lot of mood disorders are associated with decreased levels of nerve growth factor and brain-derived neurotrophic factors. So I think through like increasing those, there's probably maybe some underlying reason your libido was low that maybe you weren't even aware of that it could be supporting you through.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone want to unmute themselves or put them in the chat or say thank you to Anna? I know some people are saying that in the chat. So, um, okay. I think
Probably shut her up for hours, but
we could probably chat for hours. Yeah. And, um, but, yeah, I guess actually of the one question I guess I have is, are there, and this is also maybe one that's hard to answer if you didn't have it on the top of your mind, but like, are there sources of like out new research of this? So like, do you have any favorite like journals that you like to read or like besides just say like going to Google Scholar and putting in ergothionienes like on a site? What?
Yeah, I honestly like every day I like go into PubMed and just put in medicinal mushrooms and various different genus and species just to like see what new research has come up. There's like the International Journal of Medicinal Mushrooms, which I don't pay for, but they have a lot of great research. But yeah, I usually just honestly go into PubMed and sip my coffee in the morning and see what's come up. But there's usually, it's like, weekly. There's like new studies that come out all the time. You can go into clinicaltrials.gov too, and I can see like what's in progress. That always excites me. So it's something to look forward to.
It's very cool. Yeah, and I think those resources are great, especially because I think PubMed mostly indexes things that are like free to access.
Yeah, well, and I usually like do various oh my gosh, what's it called? No, it's dinner time. I'm like starting to lose words. I narrow it down so I usually put in like things that have come out in the last year
Mhm.
and humans and clinical trials or reviews or whatever to like, get to what I actually want. I don't want to just be reading like in vitro trials that may or may not mean anything.
Yeah, you're like, I want to see the refined down the pipeline science. You guys
Yeah,
around with
exactly. I'm like, show me something clinically meaningful, please. Yeah.
really good point. Thank you so much, Anna. And a lot of people are saying thank you in the chat for your informative presentation. I really feel like there's oftentimes a lot of like very speculative things about this topic. So again, I really appreciate you coming with all of your experience and knowledge. So
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really great.
Yeah, as do I. Thank you so much. It's just fantastic that you afforded us this time.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go eat some dinner.
yep. With your mushrooms included.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye.
get your ergothionienes in.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta go eat all my mushrooms, wake my brain back up.
All
Bye.
right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.